All right, here you guys, last section of lesson 01, Why Do We Study World History? We're going to read through this. There's a poem and then just kind of a secondary source. You are annotating through this, like why do we want to study history, if there's something really particularly moving. Otherwise, the expectation is that you just kind of read it and internalize it and get ready to use this sort of thinking for the year. So, let's begin. So this is a poem called Questions from a Worker Who Reads by Bertolt Brecht. It's actually found, if you are feeling particularly nerdy, you can find it in this very intense text, which if you are study history in college, will need to buy. But otherwise, you can just follow along here. It begins. Who builds Thebes of the Seven Gates? In the books you will find the names of kings. Did the kings haul up the lumps of rock? And Babylon, many times demolished, who raised it up so many times? In what houses of glittering gold Lima did the builders live? Where the evening that the wall of China was finished did the masons go? Great Rome is full of triumphal arches. Who erected them? Over whom did the Caesars triumph? Had Byzantium, much praised in song, only palaces for its inhabitants? Even in fabled Atlantis, the night the ocean engulfed it, the drowning still bawled for their slaves. Young Alexander conquered India. Was he alone? Caesar beat the Gauls. Did he not even have a cook with him? Philip of Spain wept when his armada went down. Was he the only one to weep? Frederick II won the 7 Years' War. Who else won it? Every page of victory. Who cooked the feast for the victors? Every 10 years, a great man. Who paid the bill? So many reports, so many questions. So we have a lot of information in that poem. They talk about the city of Thebes and the seven gates. The Thebes is a city in ancient Egypt, known for its like 7 triumphal gates, these huge structures. It talks about the city of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the world, the hangings, the gardens of Babylon, demolished multiple times, and it's asking like who built it again? Not the rulers, certainly. In Lima is glittering gold cities for the kings of the Inca. Where did the builders live that built these golden cities? It asks like who built the wall of China? Where did they go when they were done? What was their story? In Rome, who built the city? Who built the arches? In Byzantium, another ancient major city, was praised in song, but was only praised for its rulers or the people who lived there as well. Even the fabled city, so the storybook city of Atlantis, that in the story is sunk beneath the waves. It says like even those who were drowning, so the really important people of the city, right, still cried out for their slaves, help me, help me. Young Alexander the Great, who conquered India and much of kind of Europe and Russia and kind of that direction. Obviously he didn't go alone. He was a 32-year-old man. He could not have handled conquering alone. Caesar again beat the Gauls. Did he not take anybody with him? Philip of Spain, whose armada went up against Queen Elizabeth of England. An armada is like a huge amount of ships. They were sunk. Obviously, he was not the only one to cry and wasn't the only one to lose the armada. The captain of the ships, those men, the sailors on the ships. Frederick II, again another European ruler, not European, American, who else? And it basically says, like, it's that idea of history is written by the victors, right? On every page of victory. But who cooked the feast for those victors? We always forget the people who came with them. So now we're going to think about, like, this kind of next section is processing through this particular poem. So it says, the questions raised in Brecht's poem are crying out for answers. Providing them should be the task of history. It should be regarded as the place for a small group. It should not be regarded as the place of a small group of specialists, or a luxury for those who can afford it. History is not, quote, bunk or fake, as claimed by Henry Ford, a pioneer of mass motor car production, a bitter enemy of trade unionism, and even an early admirer of Adolf Hitler. So we often don't think that way about Henry Ford, super significant American entrepreneur and businessman and inventor, somebody who, like, early on was, like, pro-Hitler. History is about the sequence of events that led to the lives we lead today. It is a story of how we came to be ourselves. Understanding it is key to finding out if and how we can further change the world in which we live. He who controls the past controls the future is one of the slogans of the totalitarians who control the state in George Orwell's novel 1984. It is a slogan which is taken seriously by those living in the palaces and eating the banquets as described in Brecht's Questions. Some 22 centuries ago, a Chinese emperor decreed the death penalty for those who used the past to criticize the present. The Aztecs attempted to destroy records of previous states when they conquered the Valley of Mexico in the 15th century. And the Spanish attempted to destroy all Aztec records when they in turn conquered the region in the 1620s. Things have not been all that different in the past century. Challenging the official historians of Stalin or Hitler, two of the 19th and 20th century's greatest dictators, meant prison, exile, or even death. Only 30 years ago, Spanish historians were not allowed to delve into the bombing of the Basque city of Guernica, or Hungarian historians to investigate the events of 1956. More recently, historians in Greece faced trial for challenging the state's version of how it annexed or divided Macedonia before the First World War. Since the time of the first pharaohs, 5,000 years ago, rulers have presented history as being a list of achievements by themselves and those that came before them. Such great men are supposed to have built cities and monuments, to have brought prosperity, and been responsible for great works and military victories. And conversely, or on the other hand, evil men were supposed to be responsible for everything bad that happened in the world. For this version of history, knowledge consists simply of being able to memorize lists of the good and of the evil. It's a Trivial Pursuit's version of history that provides no help in understanding either the past or the present. There is another way of looking at history. In conscious opposition to the great man approach, it takes particular events and tells their stories, sometimes from the point of view of the ordinary participants, those cooks, those sailors, those men who were with the great men. But such history from below can miss out something of great importance, the interconnection of events, how things go together. Simply identifying with the people involved in one event cannot, by itself, bring you to understand the wider forces that shaped their lives and still shape ours. You cannot, for instance, understand the rise of Christianity without understanding the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. You cannot understand the flowering of art during the Renaissance without understanding the great crisis of European feudalism and the advance of civilization on continents outside of Europe. You cannot understand the workers' movements of the 19th century without understanding the Industrial Revolution. and you cannot begin to grasp how humanity arrived at its present condition without understanding the interrelation of these and many other events. This is adapted from Chris Harmon's A People's History of the World. If you are interested in it, it's available pretty cheaply on Amazon. I'm sure you can check it out from the library. And if you're going to be a student of history, you will have to read it at some point. All right, so kind of our last bit of information here. There will be something like this at the end of every single lesson. It's kind of a stop. Have you done these things? If you have, great, you're good to go. You have finished this Google document and turned it in. Super, super important that you turn it in. You cannot get credit if you do not turn it in. Just like if we were in person, if you didn't give me your packet, you get a 0 for it. Today's mastery check, like I said, we don't have an official one in Edulastic, which we will be using again. But today's is, did you turn in your work? There's also these like key points at the lesson and skills you've learned. Excuse me. Key points here are those that don't study history are doomed to repeat it. Kind of also, if we don't understand how it's all connected. Ancient history, modern history, our life today. We're just going to keep going in this cycle. And also, history happens every single day. Also, some skills, sometimes it'll be really casual like this, sometimes I'll be a little more in-depth, but it's where can you find materials, so can you navigate the Google Classroom, can you get stuff turned in, how to answer questions in the forum, kind of clicking around, and last but not least, turning in materials. Once you're done with that, you are good for the day. Thanks so much. Bye, guys.